And we have new information tonight. Barcelona police confirm about 20-year-old Alabama student Jimmy Gracey has drowned.
CBS 42's Avery Boyce is covering the story for us. She spoke with a forensics expert who's urging the FBI to get involved.
There are questions tonight about how far local authorities are willing to go in Barcelona to find the truth. The city of Barcelona estimates that 30 million tourists visit the city every year, making tourism a major economic driver. And it's the same reason a forensic expert has doubts about police methods. Which is why Joseph Scott Morgan, a distinguished scholar of applied forensics at Jacksonville State University, is questioning police methods.
The country does not need a black eye. And so they don't want anything negative that's going to be said that could impact tourism in that area.
20-year-old University of Alabama student Jimmy Gracey was a spring break tourist in Barcelona. Gracey went missing Tuesday. Local media say new surveillance video from the pier further indicates drowning.
The footage shows that shows how Jimmy fell to the sea. And he was alone.
Barcelona journalists say police report bruising on Gracey's body, which divers recovered on Thursday.
The dead don't bruise. Okay. If they're using the term contusion or bruises, that's something that happened in life. And that has to be explained.
Because of the impact of the waves to the rocks.
Barcelona medical examiners are performing an autopsy to confirm cause of injury and death.
I have urged publicly that the family needs to retain a forensic pathologist, a private one.
Morgan says the FBI needs to be at the autopsy in Barcelona to make sure due diligence is being done.
Also, his wallet was not with him. It was found floating in the water. Was money absent? Credit cards absent? What's the status of those? They've got somebody that has his phone. Are you kidding me? They look at how this is going to impact their economy as opposed to how it impacts these poor families that are kind of left in a lurch. And I don't want to see this happen with this child.
Barcelona police say a pickpocketer claims to have found Gracey's phone on the beach, but they've not said if anything was missing from his wallet. In Tuscaloosa, Avery Boyce, CBS 42 News.
Story tonight, remembering University of Alabama student James Gracey. He was found dead after at first being reported missing in Barcelona on a spring break trip last week. Tonight in Tuscaloosa, people gathered for a memorial mass at the St. Francis of Assisi University Parish. Good evening. I'm Sherry Jackson.
I'm Carly Lang. Hundreds of students came to pay their respects. CBS 42 senior reporter Amy Hybels was there. She has the story.
It was standing room only at the back of a packed church this evening as students gathered for the memorial mass for James Jimmy Gracey.
So today we do something very simple. We bring Jimmy here and we place him into the hands of God. And we can do that because of Christ. May our prayers rise up to you, O Lord.
Hundreds of students gathered to pray for their classmate, 20-year-old Jimmy Gracey, a University of Alabama student who died unexpectedly last week while visiting friends in Barcelona. Gracey served as a chaplain for his fraternity Theta Chi and as a philanthropy chairman. Students who attend St. Francis of Assisi University Parish talk about what a difficult day their first day back on campus was and why they want to be here for others.
I'm personally just grateful that I made it back from spring break because to think about his friends, his family, his girlfriend that don't get to see him anymore. I think, we all just have to be in a place where we're grateful to be here no matter how hard the semester gets. We have to know that the fact that we are here and we're able to celebrate the rest of it is a blessing.
We are such a big campus, yet such a small community, and like one hit is a hit to all of us. So to come together and show our support to the people who are mourning him and missing him, to show that we're here for them.
We also stopped by Denny Chimes, where a growing memorial pays tribute to the young man with flowers and messages scrawled on index cards, like this one which reads, "You will be deeply missed on earth, but I know you're up there dancing with Jesus." Senior Aidan Washington stopped by to pay his respects.
Even though I didn't know him, just knowing and hearing the impact that he had on other Christians that went to this school. And just coming, praying, knowing that even though this incident did happen, that he's with God, that he's with Christ.
On Tuesday evening, Theta Chi plans to host a vigil here on the campus of the University of Alabama to honor their late fraternity brother. Reporting in Tuscaloosa, I'm Amy Hybels, CBS 42 News.
James Gracey was from Elmhurst, Illinois. St. Ignatius College Prep on Chicago's near west side, where Gracey graduated from, held a memorial mass this morning. Dozens of students, faculty members, and residents attended the service.
The night felt alive in a way only a place like Barcelona can offer, where music spills into the streets and the glow of neon lights reflects off the sea. For Jimmy Gracey, a 20-year-old student from the University of Alabama, this was supposed to be a simple break from routine. Spring break, a chance to travel, laugh, and create memories with friends far from home. Nothing about that night suggested it would become something people would later try to piece together, moment by moment. Inside the crowded Shôko Barcelona nightclub, the energy was intense. Music pulsed through the walls, people danced shoulder to shoulder, and conversations blended into a constant hum. Jimmy was there with friends, moving through the night like countless other young travelers, chasing a good time. It was loud, chaotic, but also normal, completely ordinary for a place like this. Hours passed quickly, the kind of time that slips away unnoticed when everything around you is moving so fast. But eventually, as the night stretched into the early hours of March 17th, things began to shift. Somewhere between the music, the crowd, and the constant motion, Jimmy became separated from his group. It wasn't something that immediately set off alarms. After all, in places like this, people lose track of each other all the time. Outside, the atmosphere was different. The noise faded into the distance, replaced by the sound of waves brushing against the shore, and the occasional echo of footsteps along the pavement. The beachfront area, so lively just hours before, now felt quieter, almost still. Surveillance would later show Jimmy walking alone in that direction, away from the club, toward the water. It's in moments like these, simple, quiet, almost unremarkable, that stories begin to change. Nothing dramatic, nothing obvious, just a single path, a single decision, a single moment that no one around notices. And as you picture that scene, take a second to like the video and share your thoughts. Because sometimes, it's the quietest moments that carry the biggest questions. Jimmy kept walking, the city behind him slowly fading, the sound of the sea growing louder with every step. The night wasn't over yet, but something about it had already begun to feel different. The farther Jimmy walked from the noise of Shôko Barcelona nightclub, the more the city seemed to fall silent behind him. The bright lights and music gave way to dim street lamps and the steady rhythm of the sea. In the distance, the shoreline of Barcelona stretched out in quiet contrast to the chaos of the night he had just left behind. It was the kind of stillness that feels almost peaceful, but also strangely isolating. Based on verified reports, Jimmy was seen walking alone toward the waterfront. There were no signs of panic, no clear indication that anything was wrong. Just a young man moving through the early morning hours, like many others had done before him. But what stands out now is not what was seen, it's what wasn't. No clear record of where he went next, no witnesses who could explain what happened after those final moments. Back at their accommodation, time passed without concern at first. Nights like that often ended with people drifting off in different directions, meeting back up later with stories to tell. But as the hours moved forward and Jimmy didn't return, that sense of normalcy began to fade. Calls were made, messages were sent. At first, there was hope that he had simply lost his phone or decided to stay out longer. But as each attempt to reach him failed, the situation became harder to ignore. Worry quickly turned into urgency. His friends retraced their steps, trying to remember every detail from the night before. Where had they last seen him? Who had he spoken to? Could he still be nearby? The same streets that had felt vibrant and full of life now seemed unfamiliar and tense, every corner holding more questions than answers. And if you're following this story closely, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss moments like this, because every detail matters when trying to understand what really happened. Soon, the situation reached a point where it could no longer be handled alone. Authorities were contacted, and what started as a confusing night out turned into an official missing persons case. The search began, spreading across the same waterfront where Jimmy had last been seen. But despite the growing effort, one thing remained unchanged. No one knew where he was, and with every passing hour, the silence became harder to explain. By the time the search efforts intensified, the waterfront of Barcelona no longer felt like a place of leisure. It had become the center of a growing investigation. What started as concern among friends had now drawn in local authorities, search teams, and divers, all focused on one question: where was Jimmy Gracey? The area near where he was last seen, close to the beach and marina, not far from Shôko Barcelona nightclub, became the primary focus. Officers moved through the streets, reviewing surveillance footage, retracing possible routes, and trying to build a clear timeline from the fragments left behind. Every camera angle, every recorded moment, was examined carefully, hoping to catch something, anything, that might explain what happened after he walked away alone. Then came the first major development. His wallet was discovered in the water, not far from the shoreline. It was a small item, but it carried significant weight. It confirmed that the search was centered in the right place, yet it also deepened the uncertainty. Personal belongings don't just end up there without a reason, and with no clear witness to explain it, the questions only multiplied. Not long after, another piece of information surfaced. His phone had been recovered. Reports indicated it was found in the possession of another individual, though authorities stated there was no confirmed connection to Jimmy's disappearance. Even so, it added another layer to an already complex situation, leaving both investigators and those following the case trying to understand how these pieces fit together. Divers continued scanning the water, carefully moving through areas where visibility was low and conditions unpredictable. Each search effort carried both hope and dread, the kind that builds when answers feel close but remain just out of reach. Stories like this remind us how quickly things can change. So if this moment is keeping you engaged, take a second to like and share. It helps more people follow along as the story unfolds. Then, after days of searching, the investigation reached a turning point. Authorities made a discovery in the same waters that had been searched so intensely. It was the moment everyone had been bracing for, yet hoping would never come. The search was no longer about finding Jimmy. It was about understanding what had happened in those final hours. The discovery in the waters off Barcelona marked a turning point in the investigation. What had been days of uncertainty suddenly shifted into a search for answers of a different kind. Authorities moved carefully, documenting every detail, working to understand how a night that began so normally could end this way. The same shoreline that had once been filled with energy and movement now carried a quiet, heavy stillness. As official reports began to emerge, investigators focused on reconstructing Jimmy Gracey's final movements. Surveillance footage, already reviewed in the early stages, became even more important. It showed him walking alone toward the waterfront after leaving Shôko Barcelona nightclub. There were no visible signs of distress, no indication that anyone was following him. Just a solitary figure moving through the early hours of the morning. Based on the available evidence, authorities concluded there was no sign of foul play. The findings pointed toward an accidental fall near the waterfront, an area known for its uneven edges and proximity to the sea. The injuries reported were consistent with impact against hard surfaces near the water. It was a conclusion grounded in the physical evidence, but one that still left an emotional weight that facts alone couldn't fully ease. For those following the story, it was a moment of mixed reactions. On one hand, there was finally an explanation, something concrete after days of uncertainty. On the other, there remained a quiet sense of unanswered questions, the kind that naturally arise when moments are unwitnessed and timelines have gaps. How does a single walk turn into something irreversible? How does an ordinary night take such an unexpected turn? If you've been following this story closely, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think everything was fully explained, or does it still leave questions in your mind? The investigation, at least officially, had reached its conclusion, but for many, understanding the outcome didn't make the story any less difficult to process. It simply shifted the focus from what happened to who Jimmy was and the impact he left behind. Because beyond the reports, beyond the timelines and evidence, there was still a life at the center of it all, one that meant far more than the circumstances of its ending. In the days that followed, the focus slowly shifted away from the waterfronts of Barcelona and back to the life Jimmy Gracey had built before that trip. The headlines began to fade, but for those who knew him, this wasn't just a story. It was a loss that would be felt long after the news cycle moved on. Back home, at the University of Alabama, the atmosphere changed. Classrooms, campus walkways, and familiar spaces carried a quiet absence that couldn't be ignored. Friends, classmates, and members of his fraternity gathered to remember him, not for the way his story ended, but for the way he lived. Verified reports described him as someone deeply involved in his community, someone who took on roles of responsibility and connection. He wasn't just present, he contributed, supported others, and made an impression that extended beyond casual friendships. Stories shared during memorials painted a picture of a young man who valued faith, friendship, and purpose. It's easy for stories like this to become defined by their final moments, but the people closest to Jimmy made it clear that those moments didn't define him. What mattered more were the countless days before, conversations, laughter, plans for the future. The kind of moments that don't make headlines, but shape a person's life in meaningful ways. And if this story has stayed with you until now, take a moment to like, subscribe, and share, because remembering stories like this helps keep those moments alive, even beyond the screen. As time moves forward, places return to normal. The streets of Barcelona fill again, the music plays, and new memories are made. But stories like this leave something behind, a quiet reminder of how unpredictable life can be and how quickly things can change. Jimmy Gracey's story doesn't end at the water's edge. It continues in the people who remember him, in the lessons others take from what happened, and in the simple awareness that every ordinary moment carries more value than we often realize.